Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Jason Charity, Chair of this hearing. Welcome to the Audit Hearing Subcommittee. This is not a public meeting, but members of the public are welcome to attend. First, a few housekeeping rules. No fire drill is expected. If the alarm sounds, exit via the rear fire exits, down the stairs and through the ground floor doors. Anyone with mobility issues should wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs and use the intercom to call assistance. The assembly point is in the public square in front of CAST, just to my left, beyond the fountain. This meeting is being recorded. By entering the chamber, you consent to being filmed and broadcast on the Council's website and YouTube channel. If you wish to record, please do so quietly and focus only on the participants. Can I just ensure everyone's got their mobile phones turned off or to silent, please? And just a reminder to all those who need to speak, please press the red button beneath the microphone, and when you've completed speaking, press again just to finish. Item number 1. Looks like we have a full house, so no apologies today. Item number 2, declaration of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? No, thank you. Item number 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of September 2025. The minutes of the last meeting held in September last year. Can the minutes be agreed as a true and accurate record? Yes. Thank you, David. And second, Jane. Thank you, all agreed. Item number 4, exclusion of public and press. Today's hearing will be held in public. However, once all evidence and representations have been heard, the subcommittee will deliberate in private. At that point, all parties except the independent person, Phil Beavers, the monitoring officer, Scott Forcus, and the governance officer, Jonathan Goodrum, will be asked to wait outside. Once deliberations are complete, all parties will be invited back and the outcome announced. Item number 5, consideration of the investigating officer's report, complaint against Councillor Michael Glynn, Hatfield Town Council. Just a bit of a scene setter. I'll now ask everyone to introduce themselves. I think I'll start to my left and work right, just before we get into the substantive matter before this hearing.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Gemma Cobby.
Councillor Jane Cox. Monica Clark, co-opted member.
David Arl, independent member.
Phil Beavers, the independent person for Doncaster.
Scott Forcus, monitoring officer.
Neil Concannon, investigating officer.
Councillor Carl Miller from Hatfield Town Council.
Councillor Michael Glynn.
Councillor Glynn, if you could just press your red button on the microphone once again, please.
Right, okay.
Thank you. The subcommittee is quorate. A minimum of 3 voting members are present today. The procedure for today's hearing is set out on page 11 of the agenda papers at Appendix A. And maybe just pause at this point. Does anyone wish to raise questions on procedure? No, thank you. I now invite the investigating officer, Neil Concannon, to present his report, including any documentary evidence and, with the subcommittee's permission, any supporting witnesses. Neil, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this matter relates to 2 separate complaints alleging that Hatfield Town Councillor Michael Glynn has breached the Hatfield Town Council Code of Conduct for Town Councillors. Following an initial consideration of the complaints by the monitoring officer and the independent person, I was asked to investigate the first complaint in terms of whether Councillor Glynn had breached the code by not treating people with respect, bringing the role of councillor into disrepute. During my investigation of the first complaint, a second complaint arose and I was asked to investigate whether Councillor Glynn had breached the code by failing to treat another councillor with respect, bullying a Hatfield Town councillor and subsequently failing to cooperate with this investigation. Hatfield Town Council are legally required to adopt a code of conduct to promote and maintain high standards by its elected members. It's adopted its current code of conduct in 2021, and that can be seen at page 157 of your agenda pack. Insofar as it's relevant to this matter, it states as follows: application of the code of conduct. This code of conduct applies to you as soon as you sign your declaration of acceptance of office of councillor or attend your first meeting as a co-opted member, and continues to apply to you until you cease to be a councillor. This code of conduct applies to you when you are acting in your capacity as a councillor, which may include when your actions would give the impression to a reasonable member of the public with knowledge of all the facts that you are acting as a councillor. The code applies to all forms of communication and interaction, including at face-to-face meetings, verbal communication, in non-verbal communication. The code sets out as follows: 1. Respect as a councillor. 1.1. I treat other councillors and members of the public with respect. 2. Bullying, harassment and discrimination. 2.1. I do not bully any person. 5. Disrepute. 5.1. I do not bring my role or the council into disrepute. And then finally 8. Code of conduct investigations. 8.2. I cooperate with any code of conduct investigation and or determination. So turning to the first complaint, there are 3 complainants and 3 complaint forms received about this matter from Mr. Kenneth Knight, Mr. Paul Jagger, MBE, and Mrs. Catherine Holt. All 3 complaints relate to a statement it's alleged that Councillor Glynn posted on his Facebook page and also on a Hatfield resident's WhatsApp page. I've only been provided with a copy of the alleged Facebook post. The profile on that post contains a picture of Councillor Glynn and is in the name of Mick Glynn. The statement can be seen at page 74 of your pack and reads as follows: Dear Dunscroft residents, my name is Councillor Michael Glynn. I would like to bring to your attention regarding the local council elections for Dunscroft that were held on May the 1st, 2025. 6 candidates were elected to represent the Dunscroft ward at Hatfield Town Council. 1 candidate forfeited their seat. That person was Mr. Kenneth Knight, a well-known resident of Dunscroft. Hatfield Council had to wait for 10 days to see if anyone was going to call for another election. If no one called for an election, the council were allowed to co-opt someone onto the council at no further cost to the Dunscroft community. Unfortunately, I believe Mr. Knight chose to call for another election, which could possibly cost the council taxpayers of Dunscroft in the region of £10,000 plus. Mr. Knight, his wife Pat Knight, also ex-Doncaster Council Linda Curran, and 2 more members of the Labour Party have also signed for a by-election to take place on Thursday the 24th of July 2025. It's my belief this has been done with malice aforethought by Mr. Knight in an attempt to try and bankrupt Hatfield Town Council. I must add, Mr. Knight is one of the most vile human beings I have ever met, and believe me, I have met a few. I hope I have kept you informed in our local matters. Yours sincerely, Councillor Michael Glynn. As part of my investigation, I met with both Mr. Knight and Mr. Jagger, and they both subsequently provided a witness statement which confirmed the details of their complaints, and they can be seen at pages 55 and 66 of your pack respectively. In order to fully understand the context of the above statement, I think it's helpful at this point for me to briefly provide some information regarding the local democratic procedure to be followed in local elections. If a person is elected to the position of a town councillor and fails to take up that post by the next full meeting of the town council following the elections, this then creates a vacancy on the town council. In those circumstances, Hatfield Town Council are required to publicly display a notice of the vacancy that has arisen in the town, and the City Council also publicly display a notice at its main offices at Civic Office. In short, the law allows such a vacancy to be filled in one of 2 ways. Firstly, a petition can be submitted to the City Council's Chief Executive requesting that a by-election be held to elect a new town councillor. A valid petition has to be signed by a minimum of 10 constituents who reside in the constituency and the ward in question where the vacancy has arisen. On the presentation of a valid petition, the City Council's returning officer must then arrange for a by-election to be held within 60 days of the date of the original notice of vacancy. The costs associated with holding such an election can be significant and are borne by the relevant town council. Secondly, if a valid petition is not produced within 14 days of the date of the notice of vacancy, then the town council is free to co-opt a new member onto the town council without the need to hold a by-election. This requires the town council to advertise the fact of the vacancy and ask all interested persons to apply in writing to the town council clerk. If more than one person applies to fill the vacancy, then the town council are required to consider each candidate and then vote to decide which candidate is appointed. Mr. Kenneth Knight is the person who is the subject of the remarks in the Facebook post in question. He states he was elected on the 1st of May of last year as a Hatfield Town Councillor, accepts that he did not in fact take up the role. He explains he sent an email to both the office of the Hatfield Town Council and the City Council's elections manager on the 21st of May 2025 to formally communicate his decision not to take up the role of Hatfield Town Councillor, and that can be seen at page 58 of your pack. He strongly refutes the allegation contained within the post that he didn't take up the role and then signed a petition to call for a by-election, to quote Councillor Glynn, with malice aforethought in attempt to bankrupt Hatfield Town Council. He explains that the reason why he didn't take up the post related to the fact that both he and his wife were suffering ill health, that he had first-hand knowledge of problems at the council, and he didn't want the stress of the position of Hatfield Town Councillor. He said that both he and his wife decided to prioritise their health and well-being. He also confirms in his statement that due to the nature of his stress-related illness, he didn't feel he would be well enough to attend any formal committee hearing relating to this matter. Mr. Knight accepts that he was one of the required 10 constituents to sign a subsequent petition to call for a by-election to fill the role he did not take up, but states that he did not orchestrate this. He confirmed he was asked to sign the petition by Mr. Jagger, who was responsible for arranging the petition. During my interview with Mr. Knight, I asked for his comments about the Facebook post in which Councillor Glynn allegedly referred to him as being one of the most vile human beings I have ever met. In doing so, I made Mr. Knight aware that in an email correspondence with Councillor Glynn, which I'll return to, he had stated the reason for this comment was a suggestion that an allegation of bullying was made against Mr. Knight around 2010 by the former town council clerk. He explained that Councillor Glynn had gone on to state, I explained that Councillor Glynn had gone on to state that a full town council meeting was arranged, which Mr. Knight was invited to, and explaining himself that he refused to attend and resigned instead. He also alleged that Mr. Knight then instructed other Labour councillors to resign, also at 1 monthly intervals, costing Hatfield Town Council a large amount of money in by-elections. Mr. Knight again refuted those allegations. He said he did not bully the former clerk whatsoever, but explained he got the impression that the clerk did not like being asked questions or challenged about various issues such as seating arrangements at the council meetings. He also denied he instructed other councillors to resign, as alleged by Councillor Glynn. He explained that both he and his wife made their own decisions to resign at the time, as they did not like the way people were operating at the council. I later established that he resigned in November 2012. He confirmed a friend of his decided to resign at the same time, and other councillors resigned of their own volition over the subsequent 12 to 18 months. However, he wanted to stress that he did not instruct anyone to resign, and they freely made their own decisions. Mr. Jagger said that he became aware of the Facebook post in question, and then he felt that he could not let what he believed to be untrue allegations contained within it go unchallenged. Therefore, he posted his response to Councillor Glynn's post on Facebook, and he appends that to his complaint form and his witness statement, and that can be seen at page 69 of your pack. Mr. Jagger explained he was a personal friend of Mr. Knight and had been the secretary of the local Labour Party for approximately 2.5 years, having moved to the area 8 or 9 years earlier. He had become aware that Mr. Knight had not attended the first Hatfield Town Council meeting after the elections in May. He subsequently spoke to Mr. Knight, who told him he had not taken up the role of councillor due to ill health, and he had no reason whatsoever to doubt that. Mr. Jagger stated that initially the other 3 Labour Hatfield Town councillors did not want to call a by-election as a result of Mr. Knight not taking up his role. However, they later communicated to him that he felt Councillor Glynn would not abide by what he saw as the usual convention of co-opting a new councillor from the same political party as the outgoing councillor. Therefore, Mr Jagger confirms that he took the decision to organise a petition to call for a by-election. He wanted to make it clear that it was him that asked Mr Knight and his wife to sign the petition, and explained that he'd not wanted to do this, but was running out of time due to an imminent surgical appointment he had at the hospital, and so asked Mr Knight and his wife to sign the petition. Mr Jagger could not comment on the allegations made by Councillor Glynn about the events in 2010, as he did not live in the area at the time and had no involvement with the council. Mr Jagger is present in the chamber today and willing to answer any questions the committee may have. Finally, the third complainant is Mrs Catherine Holt. Her claim form states that she does not personally know any of the councillors involved. She describes the content of the Facebook post in question as encouraging the call for an undemocratic process and amounted to a personal attack. She believed the wording was unbecoming of a representative of Doncaster, and she simply refused to accept that sort of communication was acceptable to the benefit of the electorate. Given Mrs Holt did not appear to have any personal knowledge of the people or issues in question, and with the greatest respect to her, I did not feel she could assist me any further with my investigation, and therefore I didn't seek to interview her as part of this investigation. I'm aware that the monitoring officer sent an email to Councillor Glynn on the 16th of July to make him aware of the complaints, providing redacted copies of the complaint forms, confirming that both he and the council's independent person believed there was a breach of the code, and asked him to respond with his views by the 28th of July. On the 20th of July, Councillor Glynn responded by email to the monitoring officer. He started his message by stating that with regard to the allegation that he breached paragraph 5 of the code by bringing his role of councillor or the council into disrepute, he wished to apologise unreservedly and stated it was never his intention to bring the council into disrepute. However, he then stated he wanted to try and explain his actions with regard to Mr Knight. To summarise, he then stated that when Mr Knight was first on Hatfield Town Council, he made it clear he wanted to merge the council with Stainford Town Council, which was voted on by Hatfield Town Council but overturned. Councillor Glynn stated it was his belief that it was still Mr Knight's intention. He then went on to allege that around 2010 an extraordinary council meeting was called following allegations by the then Hatfield Town Council clerk that he was bullied by Mr Knight, that Mr Knight declined to attend and resigned. Councillor Glynn further alleges that Mr Knight, and to quote him, then instructed 3 or 4 Labour councillors to resign also at 1 monthly intervals, costing the council a large amount of money in by-elections, and that it would appear to be Mr Knight's modus operandi when it comes to elections. Councillor Glynn goes on to say that he and 2 other Hatfield Town councillors intended to make a claim against Mr Knight in the county court to recover the costs of the by-election. And he finished by stating, I hope the information I've given may show the disgust I have for Mr Knight being a former ward councillor and Hatfield Town councillor. He would be fully aware that if he hadn't called for a by-election, the council would have been able to co-opt someone onto the council at no cost. That's why I believe this was done with premeditation. A copy of his full email, along with the correspondence from Councillor Glynn in this matter, is appended to the report. On the 28th of August, the monitor officer responded to Councillor Glynn, indicating that despite the explanation he'd given in his earlier email, he could not possibly know that in not taking up his role, Mr Knight's intention was to bankrupt the council. He went on to state that Councillor Glynn that he believed both his accusation and the comment about Mr Knight being one of the most vile human beings he'd ever met were a breach of the code, and the most appropriate remedy was for him to publish an apology to Mr Knight on Facebook. He confirmed to Councillor Glynn that if he failed to apologise, then he would have to consider the need for the matter to be dealt with by the council's committee. He asked Councillor Glynn to respond by the 4th of September. On the 2nd of September, Councillor Glynn did respond and made 3 points. Firstly, he said he'd been informed that the process to issue county court proceedings against Mr Knight for the elections costs was underway, and he'd been advised that it would be inappropriate for him to discuss the matter any further, or at least until he'd heard from the court. Secondly, he stated he felt threatened, intimidated and bullied in what he described as having been repeatedly trying to force him to apologise, and he would be seeking advice on the issue. And thirdly, He commented about proceedings at a recent Hatfield Town Council meeting, at which he said all Labour councillors voted against a proposal to appoint an independent Hatfield Town Councillor as Hatfield Town Council's proper officer, which he believed showed that Labour councillors were, for whatever reason, did not want the council to progress. On the 9th of September, I sent an email to Councillor Glynn to explain that I'd been asked to formally investigate the complaints made against him and wished to meet him to interview him about the complaints. I provided a spread of possible dates and times and asked him to confirm if he was willing to meet me and confirm his preferred date and time. I did not receive a response from Councillor Glynn, and so on the 19th of September I sent a further email to ask him to respond to me and reminded him of his obligations under the code to cooperate with such an investigation. I advised him if he did not hear from him by the 26th of September, then I would have to proceed to conclude my investigation without the benefit of his response. On the 25th of September, I received an email from Councillor Glynn in which he declined to meet me. The reasons for this seemingly referred to a previous interview I held with him in January 2025 in relation to other unrelated complaints, a draft witness statement prepared for him following the interview, and the content of my investigation report, which was subsequently considered by this committee. The suggestion in Councillor Glynn's email was that either the draft witness statement and or my investigation report, it's not clear which, bore little or no resemblance to my original statement, and he went on to say he believed that the committee would have found he had no case to answer if they had seen his original statement, and that if the monitoring officer decides to act, he's willing to attend this committee in person to answer any allegations made against him. I should clarify at this point that in accordance with the Council's procedure for dealing with these matters, I always send a draft witness statement to them, but stress it's their statement and they should make any amendments they wish to a statement before signing it. I did in fact do this with Councillor Glynn, but he did not respond or sign it, and he didn't return any version of the statement to me. But I also sent Councillor Glynn a draft version of my investigation report to give him an opportunity to comment on it before it was finalised. He didn't respond to me, and finally he didn't attend the committee. On the 26th of September, the Monitoring Officer responded by email to Councillor Glynn, in which he stated that Councillor Glynn could not just decide which parts of the Code of Conduct investigation process he wished to engage in and which parts he could simply ignore. He was reminded again of his obligations, and he explained to Councillor Glynn that it was important that he cooperated with the investigation, as it gave him the opportunity to have his say and provide any defence or mitigation to the complaints. Councillor Glynn did not respond, and on the 6th of September I was advised by the Monitoring Officer that Councillor Glynn had asked him to arrange a meeting with me. Sorry, the Monitoring Officer telephoned Councillor Glynn and asked him to arrange a meeting with me. Councillor Glynn informed the Monitoring Officer that he was imminently due to undergo a medical procedure and so was unable to do so at that time. It was noted by the Monitoring Officer that on the evening of the 13th of October that Councillor Glynn was present and chaired a meeting of the Town Council, and therefore he sent a further email to Councillor Glynn on the 14th of October and requested that he contact me that week to arrange a meeting. And he was advised if he failed to do so, the matter will proceed in his absence. I'm advised that Councillor Glynn did not respond to that message. So that sets the scene in terms of the investigation of that particular complaint. In terms of a consideration of the complaint, the first issue I had to consider is whether the Facebook post in question was in fact posted by Councillor Glynn. Although Councillor Glynn has refused to meet me as part of the investigation, in his limited engagement via email in this matter, I note that Councillor Glynn does not deny he was responsible for the post. Rather, he seeks to justify the comments about Mr Knight in the post. Therefore, I have concluded on the balance of probabilities that Councillor Glynn was responsible for the post in question and the contents of it. Secondly, turning to Councillor Glynn's capacity when making the post, I note from the contents of the post that it was addressed to the Dunscroft residents. He introduces himself as Councillor Michael Glynn. The content of the post relates to Hatfield Town Council and the impact of calling a by-election on the financial position of the Town Council. He concludes the message by stating, "I hope I have kept you informed in our local matters, and yours sincerely, Councillor Michael Glynn." In my view, this goes beyond simply describing himself as a councillor, and there is a clear link between the post and his role as a councillor and the town council business. Therefore, based on the content and conclusion of the message, I'm left with the impression that in his capacity as a town councillor, Councillor Glynn was seeking to inform constituents both of the fact of the by-election having been called and his views on Mr Knight's role and intentions in that process. Therefore, I concluded on the balance of probabilities that Councillor Glynn was acting as a councillor when he made the post in question, and in doing so was subject to the provisions of the code. I now turn to the relevant parts of the code and whether there has been a breach. Firstly, respect. Mr Knight is one of 3 complainants in this case, and is clearly a member of the public, and therefore I have no doubt he is a person who is owed a duty of respect by councillors under paragraph 1.2 of the code. The key issue is whether the use of the words in Councillor Glynn's post amounted to a breach of the code of conduct as alleged. In deciding this issue on the balance of probabilities, I have considered the Local Government Association Model Code of Conduct and the guidance associated with it, given that the Town Council's code is based on the model code. I know that the guidance starts with showing respect to others is fundamental to a civil society. As an elected or appointed representative of the public, it's important to treat others with respect and to act in a respectful way. The guidance recognises that councillors will engage in robust debate at times and are expected to express challenge, criticise and disagree with views, ideas, opinions and policies. Doing these things in a respectful way will help you build and maintain healthy relationships with fellow councillors, officers and members of the public. It encourages others to treat you with respect and helps to avoid conflict and stress. It goes on to say that examples of way in which you can show respect are by being polite and courteous, listening and paying attention to others, having consideration for other people's feelings, following protocols and rules, showing appreciation and thanks and being kind. In a local government context, this can mean using appropriate language in meetings and written communications, allowing others time to speak without interruption during debates, focusing on criticism or challenge on ideas and policies rather than personalities or personal attributes, and recognising the contribution of others to projects. Guidance goes on to say failure to treat others with respect will occur when unreasonable or demeaning behaviour is directed by one person against another or about another. The circumstances in which the behaviour occurs are relevant in assessing whether the behaviour is disrespectful. The circumstances include the place where the behaviour occurs, who observes the behaviour, the character and relationships of the people involved, and the behaviour of anyone who prompts alleged disrespect. Disrespectful behaviour can take many different forms, ranging from overt acts of abuse and disruptive or bad behaviour to insidious actions such as bullying and the demeaning treatment of others. It's subjective and difficult to define. Examples of disrespect in a local government context might include rude or angry outbursts in meetings, use of inappropriate language in meetings, or written communications such as swearing, ignoring someone who is attempting to contribute to a discussion, attempts to shame or humiliate others in public, nitpicking and fault-finding, the use of inappropriate sarcasm in communications, and the sharing of malicious gossip and rumours. Disrespectful behaviour can be harmful to both you and to others. It can lower the public's expectations and confidence in you and your local authority and councillors and politicians more generally. It influences the willingness of fellow councillors, officers and the public to speak up or interact with you because they expect the encounter will be unpleasant or uncomfortable. Ongoing disrespectful behaviour can undermine willingness of officers to give frank advice, damage morale at a local authority, and ultimately create a toxic culture that has been associated with instances of governance failure. It seems to me there are 2 elements of the Facebook post in question that I need to consider. Firstly, there is Councillor Glynn's allegation that Mr Knight regarding his involvement in and his intentions in calling the by-election in question. Councillor Glynn states that it was Mr Knight who chose to call for another election and that it was his belief this was done with malice aforethought by Mr Knight in an attempt to try and bankrupt Hatfield Town Council. Based on the evidence available to me, it would seem that Mr Knight was simply one of a number of constituents who chose to exercise their democratic right to sign a petition to call for a by-election, and only did so at the request of Mr Jagger. Mr Knight was not the one who instigated or coordinated the petition. That was Mr Jagger. Even then, Mr Jagger confirms he did not intend to do so, but due to his personal circumstances, did so as he was running out of time. In any event, neither Mr Jagger, Mr Knight, nor any other person alone had the ability to call a by-election. That required at least 10 different signatories as set out before. It's simply part of the electoral system that elections can be called by eligible residents. There is no reason why Mr Knight should not have signed the form despite having been a former councillor. The phrase malice aforethought is usually related to serious criminal offences and effectively means a deliberate intention to do something. Therefore, I find that anyone looking objectively at the words used by Councillor Glynn in his post would understand from what he alleges Mr Knight had called, or at the very least been involved with others in calling, of the by-election with the deliberate intention of attempting to bankrupt the town council. There is no other information contained within the post that explains why Councillor Glynn held that belief. As set out above, in his correspondence with the monitoring officer, Councillor Glynn provides an explanation which amounts to further allegations about Mr Knight when he was previously a councillor of Hatfield Town Council, with suggestions of him resigning, instructing other councillors to resign at 1 monthly intervals, leading to further costs for the town council. I put this to Mr Knight, which he strongly refuted. Councillor Glynn does not explain what evidence he has for these further allegations and has refused to engage with me in my investigation. Therefore, on the evidence available to me, I find on the balance of probabilities that the allegation made in Councillor Glynn's post and the further allegations set out in his correspondence with the monitoring officer are false and potentially libellous. That being the case, I believe, to quote the LGA guidance, that part of the post amounts to unreasonable or demeaning behaviour directed by one person against or about another. I know that Councillor Glynn's allegations were made in a social media post that was seemingly intended to be seen beyond a large group of people, the constituents of the town council and beyond, by not only a Hatfield town councillor, but also Councillor Glynn was the town council mayor at that time. I also know that Mr Knight was a former Hatfield town councillor and had recently stood and been elected as a town councillor, but I can see no justification for such widely disseminated and untrue allegations by Councillor Glynn. I therefore found on the balance of probabilities that those allegations amounted to a breach of paragraph 2.1 of the code by failing to show Mr Knight respect. Secondly, I turn to the allegation that Councillor Glynn's post stated that Mr Knight was one of the most vile human beings I have ever met. It is not entirely clear whether he seeks to justify this comment on the basis of the allegation about the recent by-election and or the suggestion in his correspondence with the monitoring officer in this matter, which includes further allegations that Mr Knight bullied the town council clerk. I have set out previously that I found the former allegation to be untrue. The post on Facebook did not explain to readers why Councillor Glynn considered Mr Knight to be such a person, and left it to the interpretation of their imaginations. I put the latter allegation to Mr Knight and he strongly denied. He bullied the former town council clerk. Again, Councillor Glynn has refused to engage with me in the investigation, so I've not been able to elicit any further explanation or evidence from Councillor Glynn to substantiate those allegations, and therefore I've found on the balance of probabilities that the use of the word in question amount to an unreasonable or demeaning behaviour and an attempt to shame or humiliate others in public under a breach of paragraph 2.1 of the code. It's important to say in reaching this conclusion that I have balanced the requirement to treat others with respect against Councillor Glynn's right to freedom of expression under Article 10 of the European Convention of Human Rights, namely to hold his own views and express them freely. This extends to expression of views that may shock, disturb or offend the deeply held beliefs of others. However, I note this is a qualified right and must be balanced against the interests of society. In this regard, the guidance from the LGA states as follows: whether a restriction on freedom of expression is justified is likely to depend on a number of factors, including the identity of the speaker, the context of the speech and its purpose, as well as the actual words spoken or written. Democracy depends on people being free to express debate and criticise opposing viewpoints. The courts have generally held that the right to free expression should not be curtailed simply because other people may find it offensive or insulting. A balance must still be struck between the rights of individuals to express points of view which others may find offensive or insulting, and the rights of others to be protected from hatred and discrimination. Freedom of expression is protected more strongly in some contexts than others. In particular, a wide degree of tolerance is accorded to political speech, and this is enhanced protection applies to all levels of politics, including local government. Article 10 protects the right to make incorrect but honestly made statements in a political context, but it does not protect statements which the publisher knows to be false. Political expression is a broad concept and is not limited to expressions of or criticism of political views, but extends to all matters of public administration, including comments about the performance of public duties by others. However, gratuitous personal comments do not fall within the definition of political expression. In considering this issue, even if it's accepted that Councillor Glynn's post amounted to political expression, I have to consider whether he honestly believed what I have found to be a false allegation that Mr Knight deliberately intended to attempt to bankrupt the Town Council by calling the by-election. Based on the evidence available to me, as set out above, and looking at this objectively, I do not find that is the case. The only basis offered up by Councillor Glynn for this belief is his allegation that Mr Knight previously resigned as a Hatfield Town Councillor, instructed other councillors to do so at monthly intervals many years before, and suggests this is his modus operandi. As noted previously, he has not offered any explanation or evidence to substantiate this earlier allegation. Mr Knight strongly denies the allegations by Councillor Glynn. Based on the evidence available to me, as set out previously, and looking at this objectively, I do not find that Councillor Glynn could have honestly believed his allegations were truthful. With regard to Councillor Glynn's allegations that Mr Knight was one of the most vile human beings I have ever met, based on the evidence available to me, I find that this amounts to nothing more than a gratuitous personal comment that does not fall within the ambit of political expression. In my view, Councillor Glynn, if he wished to do so, could have exercised his right to freedom of expression and not breached the code by simply seeking to use his post to criticise Mr Knight for being one of a number of people who had signed a petition to call for a by-election and pointed out the financial implications of this to the Town Council. However, I believe it was unreasonable and disrespectful for him to go further and make the personal allegations and comments he did about Mr Knight. Therefore, I've concluded that in making my finding, his Article 10 rights were not violated. And so for those reasons, I find that Councillor Glynn breached the code by acting disrespectfully towards Mr Knight during his Facebook post in question. Just bear with me 1 second, please. I've already observed that the Facebook post in question was seemingly intended not to be seen by, to be seen by a large group of people. And Councillor Glynn is not the only town councillor. He's not only a town councillor, but as I say, at the time he was the mayor. I now turn to complaint number 2. So, of the there were 4 complaints in this matter that relate to comments alleged to have been made by Councillor Glynn when he chaired a Hatfield Town Council meeting on the 26th of September 2025. The complaint forms submitted contain a number of issues, but for the purposes of this investigation, it's alleged that Councillor Glynn threatened to hit Councillor Curran with a gavel and referred to knocking some sense into her. Councillor Curran is the alleged victim in this matter, and she states in her complaint form that at the end of the meeting in question, Councillor Glynn threatened to knock her head off before banging his gavel down. Councillor Smith states in her complaint form that he lifted his gavel and said those words, and that in her view it was done in a threatening manner. The next complainant, who wishes to remain anonymous, states that in her form the Councillor Glynn intimidated and threatened Councillor Curran during the meeting. They state, although they cannot remember the exact words that were used, they were to the effect that Councillor Glynn wished to see some sense knocked into Councillor Curran. The final complainant, who again wishes to remain anonymous, states that in their form that Councillor Glynn told Councillor Curran, paraphrasing, shut up else I'll knock your head off, as he banged his gavel. The monitoring officer advised me that he had obtained an audio recording of the meeting in question from the Town Council. Having had the benefit of listening to the audio recording in question, I've not had to meet and take statements from the other persons present at the time. The recording evidences that during the meeting, after approximately 32 minutes and 30 seconds of the recording have elapsed, Councillor Glynn says the following to Councillor Curran. Linda, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to chair this, presumably, meeting, and I've read the... No, you're arguing again. If I want to hit you with this gavel, I will do. Somebody's going to have to knock some sense into you. Listen, you're back chatting again. The gavel bangs, and then silence, silence. The monitoring officer wrote to Councillor Glynn on the 3rd of November by email to make him aware of the complaints, attaching, again, redacted copies of the complaint forms, and confirmed he had consulted with the independent person. He goes on to include a short transcript of the audio recording, points out the parts of the code he believed had breached, and asks Councillor Glynn to provide his response by 5 p.m. on the 10th of November. I'm advised by the monitoring officer that Councillor Glynn did not respond to his email. He's also not made contact with me to arrange to meet me. So again, in terms of turning to the consideration of the complaints, given that the behaviour complained of at this matter took place as Councillor Glynn was chairing a formal Hatfield Town Council meeting, I've no hesitation in finding that at the time that he was acting in his capacity as a councillor, and therefore the code was engaged. I now turn to whether Councillor Glynn breached the relevant parts of the code. In terms of respect, I note there is some inconsistency of the events in question as set out in the 4 complaint forms. However, as I pointed out above, I have had the benefit of listening to an audio recording of the meeting, and so have an independent record of what exactly was said by Councillor Glynn. Listening to the whole of the audio recording, it's clear, to quote the LGA guidance, that there is a robust debate during the meeting in which in of itself would be acceptable. However, it goes on to say, disrespectful behaviour can take many different forms, ranging from overt acts of abuse and disruptive bad behaviour to insidious actions such as bullying and the demeaning treatment of others. It seems to me that there is only one reasonable way to interpret the words used by Councillor Glynn, and that is during the meeting, chaired by him, he threatens to hit Councillor Glynn with his gavel, to quote him, to knock some sense into her. I again remind myself that of Councillor Glynn's Article 10's right to freedom of expression. However, on the balance of probabilities, I believe the words used by Councillor Glynn clearly amount to, at the very least, an overt act of abuse and potentially a threat of physical violence to Councillor Curran, which is totally unacceptable conduct and amounts to a failure to treat Councillor Curran with respect. In terms of the provision of the code that prohibits bullying, the LGA guidance states bullying, harassment and discrimination and victimisation, whether directly or indirectly, are unacceptable and should not be tolerated. It's important to recognise the impact such behaviour can have on individuals experiencing it, as well as on the wider organisation in terms of morale and operational effectiveness. Bullying may be characterised as offensive, intimidating, malicious, insulting or humiliating behaviour, and abuse of power that can make a person feel vulnerable, upset, undermined, humiliated, denigrated or threatened. Bullying can impact on a councillor's ability to represent their residents effectively. It can also discourage candidates from standing in local elections, making local authorities less representative of their communities and impacting local democracy. Examples of bullying include, but are not limited to, verbal abuse, such as shouting, swearing, threats, insults, sarcasm, ridicule or demeaning others, inappropriate nicknames or humiliating language. Physical or psychological threats or action towards an individual or their personal property. It goes on to talk about freedom of expression. Bullying behaviour can be contrasted with the legitimate challenges which a councillor can make in challenging policy or scrutinising performance. An example of this would be debates in the chamber about policy or asking officers to explain the rationale for their professional opinions. You are entitled to challenge fellow councillors and officers as to why they hold their views. However, if your criticism is a personal threat or abusive or offensive in nature, you are likely to cross the line of what is acceptable behaviour. Looking at this objectively, Councillor Glynn's words amount to verbal abuse, shouting and potentially physical threats. Councillor Glynn, as chair of the meeting, was within his rights to control the order of the meeting. However, on the balance of probabilities, I believe he clearly did cross the line of what is acceptable behaviour by threatening Councillor Glynn Current as set out earlier. Therefore, I do find that his conduct and words he used in question do amount to bullying of Councillor Current. I now turn to the final matter of complying with the Code of Conduct as a councillor required to cooperate with any investigation and or determinations. Should a formal complaint be made against a councillor relating to an alleged breach of the code itself requires the councillor in question to cooperate with any related investigation. Relevant parts of the guidance state the Code of Conduct is a cornerstone of good governance. It's seen to be taken seriously by individual councillors as well as the local authority as a whole. While being subject to the complaint that you have breached the Code of Conduct and having your conduct investigated may at times be unpleasant and stressful, it's essential that councillors cooperate with any code investigations and determinations. Failure to cooperate will not stop an investigation but may simply drag matters and does not allow you to put your side of the story, so increases the risk that inferences are drawn about your unwillingness to cooperate and that you will be found in breach of the code. I have set out the correspondence that there has been in this matter between the monitoring officer, the Councillor Glynn and Councillor Glynn and I. Although Councillor Glynn has offered some written comments in response to complaint 1, he has refused to assist my investigation by meeting me in order that I can interview him despite him being reminded of his duty to do so. And he failed to respond in any way to complaint 2. Councillor Glynn has previously been the subject of findings made by this committee on 2 separate occasions and subjected to sanctions. The details are as follows. Firstly, 22nd of January 2019, Councillor Glynn was found to have breached an earlier version of the code by failing to treat an employee of the Town Council with respect and acting in a way towards the same employee that a reasonable person would regard as bullying and intimidatory. The sanctions that were imposed included that he provide a written apology to the Town Council employee and copied in the monitoring officer. Secondly, on the 18th of March of 2025, Councillor Glynn was found to have breached the code by failing to treat other Town Councillors and an employee of the Town Council with respect and failing to cooperate with the associated Code of Conduct investigation and non-attendance at the hearing. The sanctions included that he provide a written apology to the former clerk to the Town Council and to Councillor Deborah Smith and the Town Council as a whole, and again copying the apology to the monitoring officer. According to the public minutes of the Town Council held an extraordinary council meeting on the 7th of February 2019 and resolved to implement all of the sanctions recommended by the committee on the 19th of January 2019. In addition, the Town Council held a meeting on the 7th of April 2025 and noted the recommendations of the committee on the 18th of March 2025. The monitoring officer has confirmed to me that he's not been copied into an apology for either of those sanctions. Therefore, I believe the only reasonable finding I can make is that Councillor Glynn breached paragraph 8.2 by failing to cooperate with this investigation and failing to cooperate with the previous sanctions as set out above. There are some final additional submissions. So in line with the Council's complaints handling procedure, the draft of my investigation report was sent to Councillor Glynn and all the complainants on the 12th of December to give them the opportunity to identify any matters to which they disagreed with or which they believe requires more consideration before it was finalised, and I asked for responses to be sent to me by 5 p.m. on the 2nd of January. I received responses from Mr Jagger, Mrs Holt, Councillor Curran and Councillor Smith to confirm they had nothing to add to my draft report. I have not received any responses from Mr Knight to complaint 1 or the 2 anonymous complainants in relation to complaint 2. On the 15th of December, I received an email from Councillor Glynn asking to see a copy of Mr Knight's email in which he confirmed he would not take up his role as a town councillor in May 2025. He also asked if I had looked into the allegations that Mr Knight faced charges of bullying the previous clerk. On the 16th of December, I responded to Councillor Glynn to confirm I'd been advised that if any formal complaint had been lodged about Mr Knight at the time, bearing in mind that that was around 2010, then given the passage of time, any associated documents would have been destroyed in line with the relevant retention periods for such documents. However, I also confirmed that I had searched publicly available documents relating to the City Council Standards Committee and Subcommittee, as it was at the time, for the whole of 2010 and 2011, but I couldn't find any reference to any formal complaints being made about Mr Knight. I also provided a copy of Mr Knight's email, having been provided a copy of that by the Council's elections manager. On the 18th of December, I received an email from Hatfield Town Councillor Miller, purportedly on behalf of Councillor Glynn. In relation to complaint 1, Councillor Miller raised various issues, including questioning the authenticity of Mr Knight's email and why his email was not in the Hatfield Town Council inbox when he searched for it. He also queried why Mr Knight's email was timed as being sent at 06:47 hours, but timed as arriving at 05:48 hours. The email can be seen at page 133 of your pack. He also seemed to question the reason given by Mr Knight for not taking up the role as Hatfield Town Councillor. In relation to complaint 2, he suggested he'd been in the room at the time of the incident and he did not believe that anyone in the room genuinely thought that Councillor Glynn would hit Councillor Curran with the gavel. On the 19th of December, I responded directly to Councillor Glynn as I pointed out that I had no confirmation he had authorised Councillor Miller to provide those comments. In relation to complaint 1, I confirmed I was satisfied that Mr Knight's email was authentic, that Mr Knight confirmed he had sent it, and that the City Council's Electoral Service Manager had confirmed to me that she had received it. I also confirmed that after consulting with the City Council's IT department, the reasons for the difference in timings of Mr Knight's email being sent and received could be due to a number of technical reasons, but the most likely reason was that either Mr Knight's system or the server through which the message was sent was set 1 hour earlier than British summertime. I confirmed Mr Knight had explained his reasons for standing at the election and subsequently not taking up the role of Hatfield Town Councillor in his witness statement. With respect to the allegation against Mr Knight regarding the former Town Council clerk, I confirmed I did not know his current whereabouts or contact details, but I did not believe I needed to speak to him before finalising my investigation. I reminded him that Mr Knight was not under investigation. I explained that as part of my investigation I had asked Councillor Glynn several times to meet with me to explain his conduct, and that that was his opportunity to provide any further information or evidence he felt relevant, but he chose not to do so. I reiterated the searches I made to check if there was any indication that a formal code of conduct complaint was ever made or investigated by the monitoring officer regarding Mr Knight, but I can find no such evidence. I explained I was satisfied I had taken reasonable and proportionate steps to investigate the matter, and ultimately whether the comments amounted to a breach of the code of conduct would be a matter for this committee to rule on, if the matter proceeded to a final hearing. I noted the comments in relation to complaint 2, but confirmed that whether anyone present at the meeting thought he was actually going to hit Councillor Curran with a gavel does not detract from the fact that he used those words attributed to him by the recording of the meeting. Finally, I asked Councillor Glynn to confirm if he did wish my final report to reflect the comments made by Councillor Miller as his additional comments on my draft report. Later, on the 19th of December, I received an email directly from Councillor Glynn in which he stated, anyone who speaks the truth, as I think that should say truth, as my blessings, to speak on my behalf. That includes Councillor Miller. I do not know what hold Ken Knight has over you and Scott Fawcus, but I will make sure the truth comes out in the end. Mick Glynn. On the 23rd of December, I received a further email from Councillor Miller, which was also sent to Councillor Glynn and the Council's monitoring officer, in which he again raised his questions over the authenticity of Mr Knight's email, comparing differences in line spacing between a copy of the email exhibited to Mr Knight's email and a copy I provided in my response to him earlier in December. To clarify, I believe the difference between the two copies of the email in question is due to formatting changes when it was exhibited to Mr Knight's statement. I have no reason to doubt the authenticity of the email. Mr Knight confirms he sent the email, and as I say, the Council's Electoral Services Manager confirms she received it and in fact acted on it. Councillor Miller also produced a copy of minutes, which can be seen at page 135 of your pack, from a meeting of the Town Council dated the 11th of June 2012, and pointed out the following entry in response to Mr Knight's witness statement. Agenda item 22, there is a mayor's statement which reads, the Town Mayor, Councillor K. Knight, issued a statement publicly apologising for his treatment of the clerk at the annual meeting of the Town Council on the 14th of May 2012. He had already apologised both verbally and in writing. I was able to locate those minutes on the Town Council website and can confirm it does in fact relate to an ordinary meeting of the Town Council on that day and contains this wording. The information contained within this minute is limited, but what seems clear is that the matter relates to one incident at the previous Hatfield Town Council meeting, and Mr Knight fairly swiftly provided both a verbal and written apology to the clerk, followed by a public apology at the next Town Council meeting. This seems somewhat at odds at Councillor Glynn's allegation or justification for his comments about Mr Knight when he stated that an extraordinary meeting was called to discuss allegations of bullying of the clerk by Mr Knight, which he refused to attend and then resigned. I also note that Councillor Glynn did not in any way offer this information in the social media post in question to attempt to frame his comments about Mr Knight. Having checked the Hatfield Town Council website, I note from the published minutes of the Hatfield Town Council meeting held on the 12th of November 2012, it's confirmed that the clerk had received notice of resignation from both Mr and Mrs Knight. I do not believe this new information justifies Councillor Glynn's comments, so does not alter my finding that Councillor Glynn's words amounted to a gratuitous personal comment and a breach of the code as set out earlier today. Of course, ultimately, that is a matter for this committee to decide. Those are my representations, Chair. I'd simply just remind the committee that Mr Jagger is available for answer any comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Neil. I'll now turn to you, Councillor Glynn. Do you wish to make? Do you wish to ask Neil any questions as the investigating officer on his report, or any of the evidence presented? Just as a reminder, press the large red button once to activate the mic, and then press it again to deactivate the mic.
I'm quite happy with the report that is read out, but I am here if you want to ask me any questions regarding what is put. I'm willing to answer them.
Thank you, Councillor Glynn. I'll now turn to the subcommittee members. Does anyone decide have any questions for the investigating officer? No, no questions. I'll now return to you again, Councillor Glynn. In accordance with paragraph 10 of the procedures, this is your opportunity to present your case. Just for the record, Councillor Miller, are you here to represent or support Councillor Glynn? Okay.
I am, yes.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Glynn, Councillor Miller, you may now present your case and, with the subcommittee's permission, call any witnesses in your support.
I'd just like to say that with the coming of Ken Knight on the night of the election, I gave him plenty of time to put an apology in. I did nothing wrong. I just couldn't believe that somebody would stand for election, get elected, and then not take his seat. And the excuse he gave about bad health and all that I couldn't accept it. I felt disgusted as a councillor, and I felt disgusted for the public of Dunscroft who voted for Ken Knight, and he let them down in such a terrible way by treating them with contempt. And I thought I had to say something. As regards the night of the meeting with Linda Curran, I was chairing that meeting. I didn't have the, benefit of a clerk. We were without a clerk. She continuously barracked me. And I believe this were tit for tat for what I'd done to Ken Knight by exposing him over his actions. It was obvious she wasn't going to let me finish the meeting. And I told her, I said, Councillor Curran, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to try and chair this meeting. And she made it as difficult as she could. That's when I slammed the gavel down and said, I wish I could hit you on the head with this and knock some sense into you. Maybe I shouldn't have said it, but it was an heated moment. The way she treated me that night was disgusting. And I went home and I discussed it with my partner. And I said, I'm resigning as Mayor of Hatfield. I said, I just can't put up with the Labour side of this council. And that's about what I've got to say, but I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Glynn. Neil, I'll sort of turn to you if you have any questions for Councillor Glynn.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Neil. I'll now turn to the subcommittee members, whether they have any questions for Councillor Glynn. No questions this side. Just moving on to summing up in that case under paragraph 13 of the procedures. Neil, I'll sort of come back to you to see whether you've got any final remarks.
I think you've heard more than enough from me, Chair. I have nothing further to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. And Councillor Glynn, do you or your representative, Councillor Miller, have anything you want to say by way of sort of summing up?
I'd just like to provide a response to the investigation that's been taken, if I'm allowed to do that, if that's all right. Thank you. Having read the report, I would like to raise some matters on behalf of Councillor Michael Glynn. I believe that the Facebook post was born of frustration because Hatfield Town Council hasn't been allowed to move on after the May 2025 elections. Although he was elected mayor, there was a lot of ill feeling towards him, especially from Labour members of the council, and also the one remaining staff member. If you can bear with me, I will elaborate. I was also subject to this awful treatment shortly after being appointed proper officer. At the time, the council had neither a clerk or a deputy clerk, so in theory I was acting clerk. The only member of staff in the office was admin assistant Emma Marsden. The council had started to fall behind with its financial obligations, and especially concerning was that the staff wages weren't being paid. The admin assistant wasn't capable of paying staff wages, so I offered to help. Having over 25 years' experience in paying wages, pensions, etc., it should have been a simple task. The council uses the services of a payroll company called Patter Payroll. I was refused access to the office email account which was used to communicate with the payroll company by the admin assistant. Given that she was obstructing her own wages being paid, it made no sense, unless of course her aim was to inflict damage on the council. Before resigning as a proper officer, I discovered that cemetery staff members who were contracted to work 30 hours were actually being paid 37 hours.
Councillor Miller, sorry to interrupt you. You've given the opportunity to present Councillor Glynn's case.
Yes.
This is summing up, so could you just sort of wrap up your sort of comments, please?
Well, I was trying to get the part through the frustration that's gone through. So anyway, okay. So I'll go on to the statements. Witness statement of Kenneth Knight. Kenneth Knight claims to have sent an email on the 21st of May 2025 to Hatfield Town Council office. I have searched for this email and it is not in the mailbox for the email address office@hatfield-town-council town.gov.uk. Why would this email be deleted? It should have been read out at the next full council meeting and recorded on the minutes. I lost count the amount of times myself and Councillor Michael Glynn requested to see this email, even though I was promised by former Deputy Clerk Nicola Russell that it would be shown at the next council meeting. It wasn't. The reason given for not showing the email was because it contained personal information. I have seen the alleged authentic email and it doesn't contain any personal information. Kenneth Knight stated, I decided not to take office due to concerns of my own health and well-being. If this is indeed the case, why did he stand for election in the first place? He refutes the allegation of bullying the former clerk Duncan Wright. However, what he fails to mention in his statement is that at the meeting of Hatfield Town Council held on the 11th of June 2012, a mayor's statement was issued which read as follows. The town mayor, Councillor K. Knight, issued a statement publicly apologising for his treatment of the clerk at the annual meeting of the town council on the 14th of May 2012. He already apologised both verbally and in writing. If Kenneth Knight wasn't bullying clerk Duncan Wright, what did he actually apologise for? As part of this lengthy investigation, 5 witness statements have been taken, all of whom will paint Councillor Michael Glynn as the villain and Kenneth Knight as the victim. Yet the one witness, former clerk Duncan Wright, that may have been able to redress some of that balance, has not been interviewed. Without a witness statement from Duncan Wright, this investigation is flawed and biased towards Kenneth Knight. If these investigations are to be deemed fair, then they need to be conducted without fear or favour. The witness statement of Paul Jagger, MBE. He's a very interesting individual. He must be the only person who can't ever get elected onto Hatfield Town Council. He might be slightly bitter and twisted because he's just unelectable. Anyway, he states, when I spoke to Kenneth Knight, he sent me a copy of an email he sent to Hatfield Town Council informing them of his decision to step down. It seems that all and sundry have been sent this email with the exception of former Mayor Michael Glynn and the former proper officer, myself. It's strange that the letter Paul Jagger, MBE, wrote has been used as Exhibit 1, but the email he claims to have been sent from Kenneth Knight is conspicuous by its absence. Could we see the email? It's all very convenient. He goes on to state, initially 3 other Labour councillors on the Hatfield Town Council did not want to call a by-election in response to Kenneth Knight stepping down. However, they later communicated to me that they felt it very clear that Councillor Glynn would not abide by the usual convention of co-opting a new councillor from the same party to replace Kenneth Knight. I am of the understanding that councillors should put the interests of their parish before the political party they support. They knew, and so did Kenneth Knight, a by-election would cost the council a few £1,000s. In signing the petition, they put the Labour Party ahead of their parish, which I believe is fundamentally wrong. Complaint 2, witness statement of Linda Curran. I ask, are you
Sorry,
threatening me?
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
as I previously said, under paragraph 10 of the procedures, you were given the opportunity to present Councillor Glynn's case and
Yes.
also evidence. This is your opportunity to briefly sum up to the subcommittee. I've given you ample opportunity to do that. I will give you 1 extra minute just to
Okay,
any
thank
closing
you.
remark, but then we'll have to move on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm guessing what she's asking if Michael Glynn is threatening her. Well, if she has to ask, it's not exactly much of a threat. I was present at the meeting and I would like to reiterate what I said previously. I do not believe that anyone in the room that night thought that Michael Glynn was going to hit Linda Curran with the gavel. She is an old hand and definitely knows how to play the victim. To conclude, regardless of today's outcome, Kenneth Knight, Paul Jagger MBE, councillors Linda Curran, Debbie Smith, James Hart and staff member Emma Marsden have already succeeded in what they set out to do from day one, which was to remove Michael Glynn from his position as Mayor of Hatfield Town Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. We've now heard from all parties. The subcommittee will move into private session. I will ask all parties to leave the room. Once we've reached a decision, you'll be invited back. If you're unable to remain, could I just ask you to let Jonathan know, please? Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I appreciate your patience whilst the subcommittee deliberated. I will now read out the decision of the subcommittee. Having regard to the report and findings of the investigation conducted by Neil Concannon, Head of Litigation and Regulatory and Deputy Monitoring Officer, City of Doncaster Council, the investigating officer, the subcommittee accepted the investigating officer's findings that there has been a failure by Councillor Glynn to comply with paragraph 1.1, 2.1 and 5.1 of the Code of Conduct adopted by Hatfield Town Council in respect of the allegations detailed in the report for the reasons identified in the investigating officer's report. Therefore, we find Councillor Glynn in breach of the code in relation to both complaints and sanction Councillor Glynn as follows. Number 1, that Councillor Glynn be censured and reprimanded for his actions. Number 2, that Councillor Glynn provides a written apology to Mr Kenneth Knight and to Councillor Linda Curran and the Town Council as a whole, copied to the Monitoring Officer. Number 3, that Councillor Glynn complies within 30 days with the outstanding sanctions levied by the subcommittee at its hearings held on the 22nd of January 2019 and on the 18th of March 2025. Item number 4, that the subcommittee's findings in respect of Councillor Glynn's conduct be published on the City of Doncaster Council's website and to recommend to Hatfield Town Council and the subcommittee's that the subcommittee's findings be published on its website. Number 5, that the subcommittee's findings be reported to Hatfield Town Council for consideration. And number 6, to recommend to Hatfield Town Council that Councillor Glynn undertakes training at the expense of Hatfield Town Council on the Member Code of Conduct and on proper conduct at meetings. And finally, number 7, to recommend to Hatfield Town Council that, with the exception of attending pre-arranged meetings of the Town Council, Councillor Glynn will be excluded from attending the offices or premises of Hatfield Town Council. Formal notification of today's decision, including the reasons, will be sent to all parties within the next 7 days. I want to thank everyone for their attendance today and contribution at today's meeting. I now declare that the hearing closed. Thank you.